Speak English like a CEO. Why power comes from how you think, not grammar. Most people believe speaking English well is about vocabulary, more words, more grammar rules, more complicated sentences. They believe confidence comes after fluency. But when you listen carefully to CEOs, leaders, and powerful speakers, something surprising becomes clear. They do not speak more English than everyone else. They speak less. Shorter sentences, simpler words, calmer tone. And yet, when they speak, people listen. This is the first truth you must understand if you want to speak English like a CEO. Power in English does not come from complexity. It comes from clarity. Why most English learners sound unconfident. Most English learners speak from fear. Fear of making mistakes. Fear of sounding stupid. Fear of being judged. So they overthink. They search for perfect sentences. They add extra words to sound smart. They explain too much. Ironically, this makes them sound less confident. CEOs do the opposite. They speak from decision, not fear. The CEO mindset before speaking. Before a CEO speaks, something happens silently in the mind. They do not ask, "Is my English perfect?" They ask, "What do I want people to understand?" This shift changes everything. CEOs speak with purpose, not permission. They do not wait for approval. They do not apologize for their voice. They assume their message deserves attention. This mindset, not grammar, is the foundation of powerful English. Why confidence comes first, not last. Most learners think, "I will speak confidently when my English improves." CEOs think, "I speak confidently, so my English improves." Confidence is not the result of perfection. Confidence is the starting point. When you speak with confidence, your voice becomes steady. Your pace slows down. Your sentences become clear. Your mistakes sound natural, not embarrassing. People do not hear your errors. They hear your certainty. The biggest mistake English learners make. The biggest mistake is trying to sound advanced. Long sentences, complex grammar, fancy vocabulary. This is not how leaders speak. Leaders speak so that everyone understands immediately. Clarity is power. If people understand you the first time, you sound confident, even with simple English. How CEOs use simple English to sound strong. Listen to any CEO interview. You will hear short sentences, direct language, clear structure. They say, "This is the plan. This is the problem. This is what we will do." They do not say, "Well, I think maybe we could possibly consider doing something like." That language sounds uncertain. CEO English removes uncertainty. Why your tone matters more than your accent. Accent does not reduce authority. Tone does. Fast, nervous speech sounds weak. Slow, calm speech sounds strong. CEOs speak slower than learners. They pause. They breathe. They allow silence. Silence is not weakness. Silence shows control. The power of pausing. Pausing does three things. It calms your brain. It gives weight to your words. It makes people pay attention. When you pause, you sound like someone who is thinking, not guessing. CEOs are comfortable with silence. Learners rush to fill it. This is a habit you can change. Why CEOs never apologize for speaking. English learners often start with, "Sorry, my English is not good. I'm not very fluent, but..." CEOs never do this. They do not lower their position before speaking. When you apologize for your English, you tell people, "Please don't take me seriously." CEO mindset says, "This message matters, even if my English isn't perfect." Speaking from decision, not discussion. Learners speak as if asking permission. CEOs speak as if stating direction. Compare. Learner style. "I think maybe this could be a good idea, but I'm not sure." CEO style. "This is a good direction. Here's why." Same idea. Different power. This is not arrogance. This is clarity. Why simple sentences sound more intelligent. Simple sentences are easier to process. When people don't have to decode your language, they focus on your message. That focus creates authority. Confusing language creates doubt. Clear language creates trust. The real goal of CEO English. The goal is not sounding native. The goal is sounding decisive. Native speakers without confidence sound weak. Non-native speakers with clarity sound powerful. This is why many CEOs speak English as a second language and still dominate rooms. What this series will teach you. This series will not teach you grammar rules. It will teach you how CEOs think before speaking, how to structure sentences simply, how to sound calm under pressure, how to remove fear from your voice, how to speak with authority. Even with basic English, you do not need perfect English. You need CEO thinking. A simple shift that changes everything. Stop asking, "Is my English correct?" Start asking, "Is my message clear?" That one shift will instantly improve how you sound. Coming next. In segment 2, you'll learn why CEOs use fewer words, how short sentences create authority, how to stop over-explaining when you speak English. This is where your speaking style starts to change. Segment 2. Why CEOs use fewer words. And how short sentences create authority. One of the first things people notice when listening to a CEO speak is not the vocabulary, it's the simplicity. No long explanations, no complicated grammar, no emotional rambling, just clear, direct sentences. This is not accidental, it is a deliberate speaking style that signals authority. And it is one of the biggest differences between how English learners speak and how leaders speak. Why most English learners use too many words. English learners often believe that more words equal better English. So they explain everything, they add details, they repeat ideas. They try to sound polite, careful, and correct. This comes from fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of sounding rude, fear of making mistakes. So they over-explain. Unfortunately, over-explaining weakens authority. How over-explaining sounds to others. When you use too many words, listeners hear uncertainty. They think, "This person isn't confident. They're not sure. They're trying to convince themselves." Even if your idea is good, your delivery makes it sound weak. CEOs understand something most learners don't. Confidence is communicated by what you remove, not what you add. Short sentences signal decision. Short sentences sound decisive. They tell the listener, "I've already thought about this." Examples, instead of, "I think that maybe we should consider changing the plan because it might be better in the long run." CEO style. "We need to change the plan." Same idea, different impact. The second sentence feels stronger because it feels final. Why CEOs don't talk while thinking English learners often think out loud. They speak while deciding. They say, maybe. I'm not sure. What I mean is, CEOs decide before speaking. When they open their mouth, the thought is already formed. This is why their English sounds clean. Not because they're smarter, but because they pause before speaking, not during. The power of one idea per sentence. CEOs usually follow one rule, one sentence, one idea. Learners often combine many ideas into one long sentence. This creates confusion. CEO style breaks ideas apart. Example: learner style. I think the reason sales are down is because the market changed and customers are more careful now. So we need to adjust our strategy. CEO style. Sales are down. The market has changed. Customers are more careful. We need to adjust our strategy. Each sentence lands clearly. Each sentence sounds intentional. Why clarity sounds more intelligent than complexity. Many learners try to sound intelligent by sounding complex. CEOs do the opposite. They assume intelligence is already there. They focus on understanding, not impression. People trust speakers they understand quickly. If people have to work to understand you, they doubt you. How fewer words create more respect. Short sentences create space. Space makes people listen. When you speak less, your words feel heavier. Your pauses feel confident. Your message stands out. CEOs are comfortable with silence. Silence makes others lean in. Why silence is part of CEO English. Silence after a sentence signals confidence. It says, I'm done. I'm not nervous. I don't need to fill the space. English learners fear silence. They think silence means failure. But silence actually means control. The difference between polite and weak. Many learners worry. If I use short sentences, I'll sound rude. This is a misunderstanding. You can be polite and direct. CEO English uses calm tone, neutral words, respectful structure, not emotional softness. Example: weak. Sorry to bother you, but I was just wondering if maybe you could. CEO Polite. When you have time, I need your input on this. Clear, respectful, confident. Why CEOs avoid filler words? Words like maybe, kind of, I think you know, sort of. These words reduce certainty. CEOs remove them. They don't soften facts. They state them calmly. This makes their English sound strong, even when it's simple. How to practice. CEO sentence structure. Ask yourself 3 questions before speaking. What is the main point? Can I say it in one sentence? Can I remove extra words? This habit alone will transform your English. Why short sentences help non-native speakers. Most short sentences reduce grammar mistakes. They reduce stress. They reduce fear. You don't need perfect grammar to sound confident. You need clear structure. CEOs choose structures that are hard to mess up. That's strategy. Real power comes from intentional speech. CEOs don't speak to impress. They speak to move things forward. They respect their listeners' time. They respect their own message. This respect creates authority. What this segment is really about. This segment is not about speaking less. It's about speaking with purpose. Short sentences force clarity. Clarity creates confidence. Confidence creates leadership presence. Coming next, in segment 3, you'll learn how CEOs control their tone, why calm English sounds powerful, how to remove nervous energy from your voice. This is where your spoken English starts to feel truly confident. Segment 3, Tone is Power. Why calm English sounds confident and nervous. English sounds weak. When people talk about speaking English confidently, they usually focus on words, vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation. But when listeners decide whether someone sounds confident, they are not judging words first. They are judging tone. Tone comes before meaning. Before a listener understands what you say, they feel how you say it. This is why two people can say the same sentence and create completely different impressions. One sounds calm and authoritative. The other sounds unsure and nervous. The words are identical. The tone is not. Why tone matters more than accent? Many English learners worry about accent. They believe a foreign accent makes them sound weak. This is not true. Accent does not reduce authority. Nervous tone does. A calm voice with an accent still sounds confident. A perfect accent with nervous energy sounds weak. CEOs understand this intuitively. They don't try to hide who they are. They control how they deliver. What nervous English sounds like. Nervous English has clear signs. You can hear it immediately. Speaking too fast. Rising tone at the end of statements. Uneven breathing. Tight throat. Words running together. This type of speech tells the listener, I'm unsure. I'm asking for approval. I'm afraid of being judged. Even if the message is strong, the tone weakens it. What calm English sounds like. Calm English feels grounded. It has slower pace, steady rhythm, lower vocal tension, clear pauses, controlled breathing. This tone tells the listener, I'm comfortable. I know what I'm saying. I don't need to rush. This is why calm speakers are often perceived as leaders, not because they dominate, but because they are stable. Why CEOs slow down when they speak. CEOs rarely rush. They slow down intentionally. Slower speech signals thinking. It gives weight to words. It shows control over emotion. Fast speech signals urgency or anxiety. Even when a situation is urgent, CEOs keep their tone steady. This steadiness calms others. Leadership is emotional regulation in public. The role of breath in confident English tone begins with breath. Shallow breathing creates tension. Tension creates shaky tone. CEOs breathe before they speak. Not consciously every time, but habitually. A full breath relaxes the throat. A relaxed throat creates a strong, even tone. You don't need vocal training. You need breath awareness. Why ending sentences strongly matters. Many English learners raise their tone at the end of sentences. This makes statements sound like questions. Example: weak. I think this is the best option. Strong. This is the best option. Same words, different ending. CEOs end sentences downward. This signals completion. Completion signals confidence. How to remove apologetic tone. Apologetic tone often appears without words like sorry. It appears in soft volume, hesitation, nervous laughter, Over-smiling CEOs don't apologize for speaking. They speak calmly and let the message stand. Respect comes from presence, not politeness. Why emotional control makes English sound better. Emotion leaks into tone. Fear speeds you up. Anxiety tightens your voice. Self-doubt raises pitch. CEOs manage emotion first, then speak. This does not mean they feel nothing. It means they don't let emotion drive delivery. The CEO rule: calm first, words second. Most learners choose words while feeling anxious. CEOs calm the body first. Then words come out clean. This is why even simple English sounds powerful in their voice. The body supports the message. How silence strengthens tone. Silence resets tone. A pause before speaking lowers heart rate, slows pace, centers breath. CEOs use silence strategically. They pause before key points. Silence makes listeners pay attention. Silence is not empty. It is preparation. Why practice tone, not just speech? You can memorize vocabulary and still sound weak. Tone is not memorized. It is trained by speaking slower, pausing more, breathing fully, reducing filler words. These habits change how your English feels, even if your vocabulary stays the same. The fastest way to sound more confident today. Here is a simple rule. Say less. Say it slower. End strong. This single rule improves tone immediately. CEOs follow it naturally. You can learn it deliberately. Why listeners trust calm speakers. Calm speakers feel safe. Safety creates trust. Trust creates influence. This is why CEOs don't shout. They don't rush. They don't over-explain. They stay calm and let clarity do the work. What this segment is really about. This segment is not about sounding impressive. It is about sounding grounded. Grounded speakers lead conversations naturally. People listen to them, not because they demand attention, but because they project stability. Coming next, in segment 4, you'll learn how CEOs structure what they say, how to open and close statements powerfully, how to sound organized even when speaking spontaneously. This is where your English starts to feel truly professional. Segment 4. Structure is authority. How CEOs organize their English to sound professional. One of the biggest reasons CEOs sound confident is not vocabulary. It is structure. They don't speak randomly. They don't jump between ideas. They don't lose their point halfway through a sentence. Even when they speak spontaneously, their message feels organized. This is not natural talent. It is a thinking habit. Why unstructured English sounds weak. Many English learners know what they want to say, but they don't know how to organize it, so they start speaking before the idea is clear. They say, "What I mean is, actually, let me explain." This creates confusion. Listeners don't know where the sentence is going. Confusion reduces authority. CEOs avoid this by structuring thoughts before speaking. The CEO thinking pattern. Before speaking, CEOs silently answer 3 questions. What is my main point? Why does it matter? What is the next step? This structure creates clarity. Even a short answer sounds complete. Learners often skip this step and speak while thinking. CEOs think, then speak. Why structure creates confidence. When your message has structure, you speak slower. You pause naturally. You don't panic mid-sentence. You sound prepared. Structure removes uncertainty. Uncertainty is what makes English sound weak. The power of clear openings. CEOs open statements clearly. They don't warm up verbally. They don't circle the point. They start directly. Examples. Weak opening. So, I was thinking that maybe we could talk about CEO opening. Here's the key issue. A clear opening signals leadership. It tells listeners, this is worth your attention. One point at a time. CEOs rarely mix ideas. They present one idea, then move on. Learners often stack ideas together. This overwhelms listeners. CEO English respects mental space. One idea lands fully before the next appears. Why simple structures sound professional. CEOs use simple frameworks. Problem, solution, situation, decision, point, reason, action. These structures are easy to follow. Listeners feel guided. Guidance creates trust. How to sound organized when speaking spontaneously. You don't need a script. You need anchors. Start with, the main point is this, then explain. End with, so this is what we'll do. This creates a beginning, middle, and end. Structure instantly appears. Why CEOs summarize naturally. CEOs often repeat their main point at the end. Not because listeners are slow, but because repetition reinforces authority. Ending clearly shows control. Weak speakers fade out. Strong speakers close. The difference between talking and leading. Talking shares information. Leading directs attention. Structure turns talking into leadership. This is why CEO English feels intentional. Nothing feels accidental. How structure reduces grammar mistakes. When structure is clear, sentences are shorter. Grammar stays simple. Mistakes decrease naturally. Structure protects non-native speakers. It gives you confidence even with basics. English. Why structure calms your brain. Structure reduces cognitive load. You are not guessing what comes next. Your brain relaxes. Relaxation improves tone. Tone improves authority. Everything connects. The CEO rule for every response. Before answering any question, pause and ask, what is the one thing they need to understand? Say that first. Everything else is optional. This rule alone will transform your spoken English. What this segment is really about is not about memorizing patterns. It is about thinking clearly before speaking. Clear thinking creates structured speech. Structured speech creates authority. Coming next. In segment 5, you'll learn how CEOs choose words carefully. Why neutral language sounds powerful. How to avoid emotional or weak wording. This is where your English starts to sound calm, controlled, and professional. Segment 5. Word choice is power. How CEOs use simple, neutral English to sound. Strong words are not just tools for communication. They are signals. They signal confidence or doubt, strength or weakness, leadership or hesitation. CEOs understand this deeply. They don't choose words randomly. They choose words that reduce emotion and increase clarity. This is one of the most important differences between CEO English and learner English. Why word choice changes how you are perceived. Two people can deliver the same message. One sounds calm and professional. The other sounds emotional and unsure. Often, the difference is not grammar. It is word choice. English learners often use emotional words without realizing it. CEOs avoid them. Emotional words weaken authority. Emotional words are not bad, but in professional communication, they change perception. Words like really, very extremely honestly, actually just. These words add emotion. Emotion makes speech feel reactive. CEOs aim for neutral strength, not emotional intensity. The CEO rule. Neutral is strong. Neutral words sound stable. Stable language creates trust. Instead of saying, "I'm really worried about this situation." CEO style, "This situation needs attention." Same meaning, different impact. The second sounds calm, focused, and capable. Why strong speakers avoid drama. Drama creates noise. Noise reduces clarity. CEOs don't dramatize problems, they describe them. Description leads to solutions. Drama leads to stress. Listeners trust speakers who sound controlled. How learners accidentally sound weak. Learners often soften language to sound polite. They say, "Maybe, I think, sort of, kind of, probably." These words create uncertainty. CEOs remove them. They don't soften facts. They present them calmly. The difference between soft and calm. Soft language feels unsure. Calm language feels confident. Soft. "I'm not sure, but maybe we could try." Calm. "This is a good option." Calm does not ask permission. Calm invites trust. Why CEOs use direct verbs. CEOs prefer action verbs. They avoid vague phrasing. Instead of, "We might want to consider improving communication." CEO style, "We need to improve communication." Direct verbs remove ambiguity. Ambiguity weakens authority. How simple words sound more professional. Many learners believe advanced words sound smarter. CEOs believe clear words sound smarter. They choose words everyone understands. Because leadership is about alignment. If people understand you immediately, you sound competent. The power of short, strong words. CEOs favor words like need, will, plan, focus, decide, improve. These words move conversations forward. They don't decorate language. They direct it. Why "I think" is often unnecessary. "I think" is not wrong, but it weakens statements when overused. CEOs don't announce thinking. They present conclusions. Instead of, "I think this is the best approach." CEO style, "This is the best approach." If asked for opinion, context already exists. How to sound confident without being arrogant. Confidence is not loud. It is calm certainty. CEOs don't exaggerate. They don't say, "This is the best thing ever." They say, "This works." Simple, grounded, trusted. Why word economy matters. Using fewer words forces precision. Precision creates authority. CEOs remove unnecessary language. They keep only what matters. This discipline makes even basic English sound powerful. The role of consistency in word choice. CEOs are consistent. They don't change tone suddenly. They don't switch styles emotionally. Consistency builds predictability. Predictability builds trust. Trust builds leadership presence. How to practice CEO word choice. Daily before speaking, ask, "Is this word emotional or neutral? Can I say this more simply? Does this word add clarity or noise?" This habit transforms English naturally. Why neutral language feels safe to listeners. People feel safe with calm speakers. Safety increases attention. Attention increases influence. This is why CEO English works in meetings, interviews, and presentations. What this segment is really about. This segment is not about sounding cold. It is about sounding controlled. Controlled language reflects controlled thinking. Controlled thinking reflects leadership. Coming next. In Segment 6, you'll learn how CEOs handle mistakes while speaking, how to recover instantly without losing confidence, why mistakes don't reduce authority when handled correctly. This is where fear finally leaves your English. Segment 6. Mistakes don't kill authority. How CEOs stay confident, even when their English isn't perfect. One of the biggest fears English learners carry is the fear of mistakes. Not big mistakes, not embarrassing moments, small ones, a wrong tense, a missing word, a sentence that didn't come out right. That fear sits quietly in the mind, and it does more damage than the mistake itself, because fear changes how you speak. Why fear of mistakes sounds worse than mistakes. When you fear mistakes, your voice changes. You hesitate, you rush, you apologize, you explain too much. The listener doesn't notice the grammar error. They notice the loss of confidence. CEOs understand something very important. Mistakes don't reduce authority. How you react to mistakes does. The truth about CEO English: CEOs make mistakes. Even native-speaking CEOs do. They miss words. They restart sentences. They simplify mid-sentence. And nobody cares. Why? Because they don't react emotionally. They stay calm. Calm protects authority. Why most learners panic after a small error. Learners often think, they noticed. I sounded stupid. I ruined my image. This panic triggers damage control. They say, sorry, what I was trying to say was, my English is bad. This reaction draws attention to the mistake. CEOs don't do this. They move forward. The CEO rule for mistakes. Here is the rule. If the message is clear, ignore the mistake. CEOs don't correct themselves unless clarity is lost. They value flow over perfection. Flow keeps attention. Perfection breaks it. How to recover from a mistake without losing power. If you need to correct yourself, do it cleanly, not emotionally. Weak recovery. Sorry, I'm not good at English. CEO recovery. Let me rephrase that. Then continue. No apology, no explanation, no embarrassment, just clarity. Why confident recovery builds authority. When you recover calmly, listeners think, this person is composed. They don't panic. They can handle pressure. Authority increases. The mistake disappears. Your presence remains. Why CEOs don't announce their weakness. Learners often warn people, my English isn't good. CEOs never do this. They don't lower expectations. They let performance speak. If something needs clarification, they clarify. They don't apologize for existing. The difference between self-aware and self-conscious. Self-aware speakers notice mistakes calmly. Self-conscious speakers obsess over them. CEOs are self-aware. They adjust without drama. Drama is what weakens English. Why audiences care about message, not perfection. Listeners are busy. They care about what you're saying, why it matters, what happens next. They don't care about grammar details. Authority comes from relevance, not correctness. How to train your brain to stop fearing errors. You must change what mistakes mean. A mistake is not, "I failed." It is, "I communicated under pressure." CEOs don't see mistakes as failure. They see them as noise. They ignore the noise and continue. The most important shift: stop trying to sound correct. Start trying to sound clear. Clarity forgives mistakes. Confidence forgives mistakes. Calm forgives mistakes. Fear does not. Why practice should include imperfect speech. Many learners only practice perfect sentences. This creates fear in real conversation. CEOs are comfortable with imperfect speech because real communication is imperfect. Practice speaking without stopping. Flow builds confidence. The power of continuity. Authority comes from continuity. Continuing despite imperfection. Moving forward despite small errors. This continuity tells listeners, this person knows where they're going. Leadership is direction, not flawlessness. Why silence after a mistake is better than apology. Silence resets confidence. Apology amplifies doubt. CEOs pause, then continue. The pause feels intentional. The mistake disappears. What this segment is really about. This segment is not about fixing English. It is about removing fear. Fear is the real enemy. Once fear is gone, voice stabilizes, tone improves, confidence rises, authority appears. Your English doesn't need to be perfect. Your mindset does. Coming next, final segment. In segment 7, everything comes together. You'll learn how CEOs speak in high-pressure moments, how to carry presence in any room, how to speak English like a leader. Consistently, this is where CEO English becomes your natural style. Segment 7, Speak like a CEO. How to carry presence, authority, and calm in any situation. At this point, something important should feel different. Not dramatic, not loud, but steady. You no longer feel like English is something you perform. It starts to feel like something you use. That shift is everything, because CEOs don't try to sound confident. They don't rehearse confidence. They don't chase approval. They carry presence. And presence is not created by perfect English. It is created by how you show up when you speak. What presence really is. Presence is often misunderstood. People think it means being loud, being dominant, being aggressive. Talking the most, that is not presence. Presence is stability under attention. It is the ability to speak without rushing, to pause without panic, to hold silence without discomfort. Presence tells the room, this person is grounded. CEOs don't need to prove themselves. They let presence do the work. Why CEO English feels different when a CEO speaks. The room feels different. Not because of vocabulary, not because of accent, not because of authority titles, but because of emotional control. They don't leak anxiety. They don't leak doubt. They don't leak urgency. Even in pressure, their tone stays calm. That calm spreads. The final shift, from speaker to leader. English learners often speak to be understood. CEOs speak to lead attention. They guide the listener. What to focus on. What matters. What happens next. This is why CEO English feels intentional. Every sentence has direction. How CEOs handle high pressure. Moments pressure reveals style. In meetings, in interviews, in conflict, in unexpected questions. Learners often panic under pressure. CEOs slow down. They don't rush to answer. They don't fill silence. They don't overreact. They pause. That pause is power. It tells everyone, I'm in control of myself. Why slow is strong speed signals fear. Slowness signals confidence. CEOs are never in a hurry to speak, even when time is limited. They choose words carefully. They let sentences land. This creates weight. Weight creates authority. How to enter any room with CEO presence. Before speaking, CEOs do one thing instinctively. They arrive mentally. They don't speak from distraction. They don't speak from apology. They don't speak from insecurity. They center themselves. Even one breath changes posture, tone, and focus. You can do the same. Why you don't need perfect English to lead leadership is not linguistic perfection. It is emotional regulation plus clarity. Some of the most powerful leaders in the world speak English as a second language. Use simple words. Make grammar mistakes and still command rooms. Why? Because they don't collapse internally. Their presence holds. The CEO communication loop. Everything you learned follows one loop: calm, clarity, confidence, authority. Not the other way around. You don't wait for confidence. You create calm. Calm creates clarity. Clarity creates confidence. Confidence creates authority. This loop works every time. Why this style is sustainable. CEO English is sustainable. It doesn't depend on motivation, energy, perfection. It depends on habits. Habits of pausing, simplifying, speaking with intention, letting go of fear. Once these habits form, your English stops feeling fragile. What changes when you adopt this style? People interrupt you less. People listen longer. People respond more seriously. Not because your English changed overnight, but because your delivery stabilized. Stability attracts trust. The quiet confidence shift. One day, you'll notice something. You speak, you pause, you continue. And you don't feel nervous, not excited, not dramatic, just steady. That steadiness is leadership presence. Why you no longer need validation. CEO-style English does not seek validation. It does not ask, was that okay? Did I sound good? Do they like me? It focuses outward. What is the message? What is the decision? What is the direction? This outward focus removes self-consciousness. The final truth about speaking like a CEO, is not about sounding important. It is about being internally organized. Organized thoughts, organized emotions, organized delivery. When the inside is organized, the outside sounds confident. What to remember? Moving forward, you don't need advanced grammar, fancy words, a perfect accent. You need calm, simplicity, structure, intentional speech. That is CEO English. Remember this: people don't follow perfect speakers. They follow stable ones. They follow voices that feel calm in chaos. They follow words that feel clear in confusion. When you speak English with calm intention, you don't just communicate. You lead.